let's talk about writing emotionally satisfying character arcs. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. This is Carly Stevens Books for all things writing, publishing, and indie author life. So everybody talks about character arcs, right? And character arc is basically just a change that the character undergoes from the beginning of your story to the end. Most character arcs are positive, people changing in a positive way, overcoming something. There is such a thing as a flat or negative arc, just so you know what the terms mean. A flat arc means that the character does not change. It's a situation like most of the Indiana Jones movies where he is the catalyst for change around him, but otherwise he is not actually changing from one movie to the next. That is not as popular a way to tell stories anymore. There is a place for it, but it's definitely a small niche. Kind of the James Bond-esque stories can get away with it, but for the most part, a character arc of some kind is going to be needed to grip your reader and ground your story in an emotional way. Regardless of the genre that you're writing. You could be writing adventure, you could be writing thriller, you could be writing fantasy, whatever it might be. And in order for the action to matter, for the ending to hit, these character arcs are going to do a lot of that emotional lifting for you. So a flat arc is where the character does not change. A negative arc is where the character changes in a negative way. Something gets worse and worse as you go by. So that would be something like a Breaking Bad, that would be a episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, that kind of thing. Those are not as popular because they are difficult to pull off, and what are you really saying, etc., etc. Most people want to feel like they can improve as well. And character arcs give you that sense that improvement and, that kind of thing is possible for people. And so we can live vicariously through these characters and experience a kind of catharsis that things have gotten better. Okay, so some character arc examples, and then I'll dig into how you can make yours particularly satisfying and not feel like a sudden switch or something that doesn't quite match, or maybe people are having trouble connecting with your character. We're going to deal with all that here in a second, but just so you know what I'm talking about, here are a few examples. I'm going to put them up here on the screen. So first example of a positive arc would be Pam Beesly in The Office, one of my all-time favorite shows. She slowly becomes more confident as she learns to stand up for herself. So it doesn't need to be this big dramatic change in order to be a satisfying character arc. We see her change and progress as the series goes on. Another more dramatic positive arc would be Iron Man, so Tony Stark in the whole Marvel universe, as he becomes more selfless, as he develops meaningful relationships. He starts out extremely selfish, but of course he ends up being a sacrificial character on multiple occasions because of how much he's grown over the course of that series of movies. I already mentioned this, but an example of a negative arc would be Anakin Skywalker in episode 3, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. He becomes crueler as he gives into his fear of losing others. Okay, so let's do a little bit of brainstorming here, and then, like I said, we'll do a deep dive into the mechanics of how this works, the stuff that's going on in the background of character arcs that just make you feel something deeply. So consider, you are writing a story, I presume. How does your main character change over the course of the story? Do you know what you want this character to learn, how you want them to develop, what you want them to overcome? If you have a concept of that final destination, then understanding the scaffolding behind it will help you reach that destination in a way that feels real, in a way that feels meaningful. So just keep that in mind. How do you want your main character to change? Sometimes, especially if you're writing a more action-based kind of a story, it can be easy to overlook the character changing at all. But even if it's in a small way, do consider, what do they take away from this situation that they did not have at the beginning. That's going to be important to, like I said, making your action and the rest of your plot matter more. Okay, so we're gonna dive into the psyche of your character. Some of these things that I'm going to mention are just meant for you, the author. You do not always state them aloud in your story, but knowing these underpinnings of your character will give you so much amazing fodder for these moments, these turning point moments that will lead your character from who they are at the beginning of the story to who they are at the end. So here are the 3 things I want you to consider. Number 1 is a lie your character believes. We'll unpack that in a second. Number 2, an event in their past that created or solidified that belief. And number 3, the truth that needs to replace that lie. So when I'm talking about this in terms of character arc, I'm talking about a lie as either a belief that they have about themselves, a belief that they have about the world in general. This is like part of their belief system. It's not just they were lied to once and they believed it. It's not that so much as a misconception of themselves, others, or the world that needs to be confronted in the story. So a lie that your character believes is going to inform the way that they react to the world. And I'm going to give some concrete examples afterwards so you can see how I break this down. But that lie is going to inform the way that you react to other people, etc. The event in their past that solidified that mistaken belief will make it difficult to change because they have this anecdotal moment that they can look back to and say, no, all people are evil, or no, I am worthless, or whatever it is, that lie that they're living with, whether or not they know that that's underpinning who they are and what they believe. So it's going to make it hard for them to change. And then the truth that needs to replace that lie, here I'm assuming a positive character arc. A negative one would be the lie is confronted and reinforced, and the person just leans harder into that. But here I'm going positive. So the truth that needs to replace that lie must come from confronting the lie that they believe. So that can be done in a variety of different ways, different scenes, different foil characters, those characters that contrast with the main character and maybe, had something similar happen but took a different path. So let me give you a more concrete example of how this might play out in a character. So we have a character who believes that they will always mess up, so nobody can trust them. Like, they avoid responsibility. They don't trust themselves to make the right decision, to make the right move. Maybe they lean really hard on other people because they just don't have that kind of self-confidence. They never volunteer to be a part of anything because they're afraid they're going to ruin it. So you have that lie, I always mess up so I can't be trusted, and it's going to inform a lot of the ways that they kind of automatically react to situations, because this is something that maybe they don't tell themselves in so many words, but it's what they believe. This is just part of the way the world is in their mind. The formative event that solidified this idea for the character is being the reason that a sports team loses a big televised game. That would be traumatic, that would stick with you, that would really implant that idea for this character, certainly, that mistake was so big that you cannot be trusted to do the right thing, to show up for a team. You will be the reason that it fails, and you don't want that on your conscience. So that did happen once, right? So that you have that anecdotal evidence that you can look back at, the character can look back at and say, see, look, if anybody actually confronts them about this, see, look, no, I can't be trusted, I always mess up. So the truth that they need to replace that lie throughout the course of the story is to realize that they're capable of coming through for people. So the story, whatever the story is, if you want that to be the change, the thing that they learn across, the course of the plot is you need to have them confront that lie. You need to put them in situations where people, do invite them onto a team and they say no, no. So they're confronting the reality of that lie. Maybe they are part of something and they mess up again. That's going to reinforce that lie within them. Or you could go the opposite direction and maybe they actually manage to come through for a team or a group. Maybe that is something that they consider a fluke, but it's evidence that's going to start tipping the scales against that one traumatic event toward that positive change of realizing, no, I am capable of coming through for the people that I care about. And that means, if this is the change that you want for your character, that the climax of the story, the big confrontation at the end, the big moment that comes toward the end of the story should have something to do with this belief and demonstrating that change that they've undergone over the course of the story. Have them stand up and fight for the people that they believe in. Maybe it's just them and everything relies on them. Have they really changed or not? Kind of put have the rubber hit the road there at the end of the story. A typical plot arc is going to also have a sort of come to Jesus tipping point at the 50% mark where they start realizing, oh crud, is this other way the real way to think? Or there's going to be this big confrontation at that 50% mark as well. But definitely in that final moment, it's going to look different depending on the genre that you're writing. Maybe it's a big fight, maybe it's an Act 3 breakup, whatever it is. It should be about, in a lot of ways, that lie or truth that the character has been consciously or unconsciously balancing this whole time. So I want to give you an example from my book quickly. I'm just going to run through these. Firion Rising, which is the first book in the Tanyuan Academy series, which is a young adult fantasy trilogy about a guy who gets into an elite academy of mental warriors, and he's willing to do anything to be the best, even some very bad things. That's the setup, but it's dark, it's twisty, it's epic. There is a second main character that I could have talked about as well, Kyria, who's basically the princess who learns to step into her power by the end of the story. But we're going to focus on Firion because he has a longer way to go in this story. So the lie that he believes, and he doesn't usually think this in so many words to himself, but I know that he believes this. This is why he acts the way he does. He thinks that he is worthless, completely unlovable, unless he becomes the best at what he does by any means necessary. He is going to earn worth. He is going to demand love because he has earned it. I mean, this is the way that he starts out the story thinking. The formative event and time in his life was he grew up in an abusive household where he was told he was worthless. So this is the messaging that he got as a child. That's where a lot of these lies come from, is from something early in a person's youth, and he got hurt anytime he did something wrong. So this reinforced the idea that in order to be loved, he had to not do things that were wrong. He had to earn it. Otherwise he was worthless. And so when he gets the chance to go to the Tanyuan Academy, he is really excited to not only be there and get in, he is excited about that because he can leave his bad situation at home, but also he thinks, I'm going to own this place. And that is the level of focus that he brings to his training. And it's all because of this baggage that he's not really aware of, that is in the background of his thoughts, right? So the lie that he believes informs his reaction to his situation, to his environment, to other people. Because of this belief he has about himself, this is why he works so hard. He is a workaholic. He barely sleeps. He's like one of those influencers who's like, I got up at 3 and, started to do some push-ups. It's why he's a womanizer. So he starts out being a pretty terrible person. He is a womanizer. He feels like if he doesn't take that worthiness or command that love that he craves, then he thinks he won't have it, and that's not an option. So he's willing to use manipulation or whatever tactics he feels are necessary in order to get that validation, that sense of worth and love that he did not have, and he doesn't think that he will have otherwise unless he finagles the system. So by the end of the story, which is it's an adventure story about a warrior academy and a power struggle between different powerful entities, this is the heart of the story. What is love really, and what worth does he have just as himself? So by the end, this lie needs to be resolved. Is it reinforced, or is it replaced with the truth, which is that inherent worth that he has, and that love is not this domination of other people. It's self-sacrifice, etc. But you can always just read the book and find out how that gets resolved. It's a rocky road for my guy. So your turn to think about your characters now. I've shared about mine. So what is a lie that your character believes? Again, this is not just any old lie. This is something that they think is true fundamentally about themselves, about others, or about the world. So it's a big misconception. And then what event or element of their background made them believe that way? It can be something small that just stuck with them and won't let go until you have these moments where you're eroding away some of those ideas. So going back to Firion for a second, a lot of the way that he starts very slowly to realize that he needs to change. He never really thinks to himself super clearly what I just articulated to you, because it's all subconscious for him. But, maybe love isn't demanding it and earning it and all of that. He starts to realize that from his roommate, who is just a really kind, loving person who is loyal to Firion even when Firion does some bad things. He demonstrates what love is, not romantic love, but just care, like being a ride or die for somebody else. Kyria, similar thing. She also demonstrates what it means to just be worthy, not to earn worth. If that makes sense, it makes sense in the story. But by observing these people and actually eventually slowly learning to actually respect them, Firion realizes that you don't need to manipulate, you don't need to be the best fighter, you don't have to just scrape and fight your way and claw your way to the top to have any sort of worth or meaning. Love is not earned by doing that. It's given in a self-sacrificial way. Okay, anyway, I've been harping on that quite a bit, but you get the idea. And then for your character, what truth do they need to replace that lie? So maybe you already know how your character is going to change. You can switch the language a little bit. You can give it a slight shade of meaning that's different, because now you understand that it's replacing a particular lie that the person is dealing with. And then on a plot level, here's where you start getting scenes, meaningful scenes that will inform and fit into your plot really nicely, whether or not people understand why. And that is, how will you make them confront that lie or that fear? So is your character going to observe somebody else? Going back to that sports example, will they see somebody else mess up and observe the way that others around them treat that person? Are they going to be forced into a leadership position that they don't want? So there are lots of different ways that you can have them confront whatever that lie might be, and the validity of it. But those scenes are going to add a lot of emotional weight to your story, even if they might feel like they're not strictly about the plot. They are, because plots are usually what's happening on the outside and how that's affecting people inside. What I've talked about during this video is just that inside portion that lends emotional weight and ultimately satisfaction to your readers when they go on this journey with your character as they grow over time. All right, that is it. That is the key, in my opinion, and I've used this over and over again, and it's been very, very effective for creating characters people connect with, that feel real, who, their change doesn't feel like some kind of flip of a switch, but instead something that's really earned, which is important to anybody who's trying to go along on this journey with them, right? Whew. So make sure to like this video if you like it, subscribe to the channel, and head on over to carly-stevens.com, my website, for more resources for writers like you. So that's it. I will see you next week. I hope you have a good writing week. I hope you have some new ideas for how to make your story shine out even more. All right, good luck, and I'll see you later.